So, hey, Lynda, it's so amazing to have some time with you today. And yeah, I just want to let you do a little brief introduction to yourself for anyone that may not recognize your name or the name of the organization that you represent.
Hi, Penny. Thank you so much for inviting me to have a chat with you today. It's great to be here. So I don't know how much of an intro you want. We can explore more about who I am and what my background is, but my name is Lynda Wharton. And probably most people that watch this or listen to this podcast will know me from my work with a voluntary organisation I established 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now actually, called the Health Forum NZ. And so we've spent the last 2 years supporting COVID injection injured New Zealanders, families who have lost loved ones after the injection. And we've got a really big social media presence where I do my darndest to get the truth, peer-reviewed science and voices of authority from around the world, the truth of the other side of safe and effective, that we just can't find, we can't access that information within New Zealand official information. Yeah.
Wow. And I just want to just go back a little bit to the timing that you had a little Facebook group, right? That was quite small. And then
I did.
And then it blew up. And I just want to say how honored I feel to be in a situation where I can have this conversation, because I was one of those people that found you just as it was taking off. So
Wow.
I always knew that something was off, but I was living my life. And then when the announcement came that they were going to jab the 12 to 15-year-olds without parental consent, I very rapidly fell down the rabbit hole. And so what I did was I went on to Facebook and I looked up some of my friends that were kind of on the fringe of, they weren't close friends of mine, but they were into natural health. And I found a post from a dear friend of mine who's an osteopath and is into natural health, and she had posted something from your page. So I got in there right at that time where it all blew up, and it was August, September 2021, right? And and then I remember seeing a note that sorry for the delay, but we're getting really overwhelmed with approving everybody in. So that was kind of when I first became aware of you. So do you want to just talk about what happened back in August 2021 for you around that with your presence?
Okay, well, maybe before we go to August, is it okay if I just give a little bit of background about how the group came about, just so people can, then we'll move into that crazy peak time, where, by the way, when we sent you that notice, we had a tiny little admin team, myself and 5 amazing women volunteers who were just stalwarts for the cause. Nobody got paid anything. They were just passionate about what we were doing, and they were approving 500 new members a day when we sent you that member. So they were working like 12-hour days, because we didn't just let everybody in. They literally clicked through their profiles, had a look at who they were. Sometimes they Googled who they were, because of our subject matter and the safe space that we were trying to create. We were so careful to do our darndest to keep out trolls and people that were deliberately coming in to cause mayhem. Anyway, so I'll go back a wee bit from there. So I actually started the group, I don't know when I started it, but I think it was around March or April of that year, I think maybe April. And I started it because I'd been watching the development of the COVID vaccines and the warp speed rollout. And of course, New Zealand was not one of the first countries. It was rolled out several months earlier in the USA, England, quite a few European countries, Israel, of course, which was the test tube. It was, the sort of captive population for Pfizer, really, Israel. So I started watching what was happening in those countries and looking at, with the exception of Israel, looking at the pharmacovigilance databases, which are the government-sponsored, government-owned databases. Here in New Zealand, we have MedSafe. And the idea of those databases is that members of the public and medical personnel, be they nurses, doctors, or pharmacists, whoever, if if somebody experiences an adverse event following their injection, irrespective of whether they know that there was a causal link between the injection and the event, the idea of those databases is that those events are reported there, and they just become a representative cross-section of what's happening. They don't by any means capture all of the events that are happening. In fact, in New Zealand, we have got one of the highest captures in the world of adverse event reporting, and MedSafe themselves acknowledge that we have no more than 5% of actual events are reported to our pharmacovigilance. So I was watching these databases. The rest of the world is less than 5%. America, for example, which has got one of the biggest databases in the world, the VARS database, owned by the CDC, designed by the CDC, they capture 1% of what is actually happening over there. So the idea is that they're a red flag system. They're supposed to highlight inconsistencies in normal reporting. I was watching those, and very quickly I started to see something different to anything that I'd seen with any previous vaccines, because I had done this kind of research with other vaccines due to my background as a health researcher and a writer. And what I noticed this time was not only how quickly the number of adverse events escalated, and I thought, okay, well, maybe we can explain that away with the fact that this is a mega rollout. There are hundreds of thousands of people a week being vaccinated in some of these countries. But besides that, I also noticed really quickly the number of very serious adverse events that were being reported. Usually those databases are clogged up with a fever for 24 hours or a red sore arm or, a headache for 2 days. But these were major things I was seeing. They were heart attacks and strokes and paralysis and neurological damage and hospitalizations and big stuff. So that alerted me to the fact that what we were looking at was quite different to your average vaccine. People think about a vaccine. Oh yeah, MMR and flu vaccines and shingle vaccines. I know what a vaccine is. That's what was in people's minds. But I started to see something very different. So then it was New Zealand's turn. Our Pfizer arrived with great, triumph and trumpets and the 1 o'clock podium and haven't we done well? Here comes Pfizer. And so I thought, surely somebody in New Zealand that is way more equipped to do this than I am, somebody is going to stand up and have a public discussion around that there is another, what is happening overseas. There is another aspect to this besides safe and effective. So that was all we were ever allowed to hear or be told, safe and effective. And of course, nobody stood up. I was expecting an immunologist or a bioethicist or somebody, and nobody stood up. So one day, out of just sheer frustration, I jumped on Facebook. I set up a closed Facebook group in about 10 minutes. And I thought, right, this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start publishing these voices that are now starting to speak out overseas so that New Zealanders can have some kind of an informed consent process, because it became evident very quickly that we were not going to be allowed an informed consent process in New Zealand. So when I set the group up, I thought, hey, maybe 2,000 New Zealanders will join me, and then maybe they'll share some of my posts and people will talk a little bit. And so I was completely ill-equipped for what happened. I started my group, and I think we had like 1,000 members within just a couple of weeks. And from there, it just snowballed until you discovered us at our peak when New Zealand was just in the peak of trauma with mandates and craziness going on. We lasted 9 months on Facebook before we were deplatformed through Facebook censorship. Yeah.
Wow. And actually, that's where I came across you again, because I remember when you were being deplatformed and you kept going into Facebook prison, and you and it kind of became this badge of honor in the truth movement, didn't it? Because what, we're in Facebook prison again, and then you'd be let out of Facebook prison, and so you started looking at other platforms, and people were looking at Telegram. And I remember at the time that you decided to go on MeWe, and then I was looking at doing stuff with some things. And so we were like, well, Lynda and her team will have done her research. So we created platforms on MeWe as well. And then I realized, because I come from sort of a marketing and comms background, but also I come from an adult learning and change management background, is like, oh man, how do we do this change management piece of getting people off the platform that won't allow us free speech? I know, right? And onto a new platform, and also realizing that the age of a lot of the people that we were dealing with were older than me. And so they were technologically adverse to change, and it was big enough if they were on Facebook, but then to get them to download another app and then figure out how to use it. And so, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, but this is the technological challenges that we were facing, right? Trying to get the truth out.
It's so real.
Yeah, and
it's
so I created that little guide on like how to use MeWe 101. I just screenshotted it, and I kind of brought out some of my old career skills, and then I sent it to you, because your group was what I would consider at the time to have been the most important group for people to follow. And so I flicked it off to you and was like, hey, I know what you're going to deal with, is all these people aren't going to want to change. And then next thing, you contacted me because you got locked out of your MeWe account. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I do remember. I got locked out of MeWe. I got back in, obviously.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So I went on to like MeWe support, and I was like, shit, I need to help Lynda with this. And so I got on to, and by the way, everybody listening, like Lynda and I didn't know each other. And so I got onto the MeWe international support thing, and I put the question out and said, how do we do this? And they went, oh, go to the user pages. And I was like, the answer's not there. And it took about 3 weeks. And then I finally got someone from MeWe to contact me. And then I sent it to you, and I don't know whether that's what helped you, but this is kind of how our network helps each other, right?
Much. Thank you so much, Penny, because I'd still be floundering around in cyberspace working out how to get it back on MeWe without you. I'm so technologically challenged. I mean, the number of challenges I've stepped over this year, one of the big ones, or in the last 2 years, one of the big ones has been dealing with all these platforms, because I'm a technophobe. So yes, I could deal with Facebook, and as you have described, then we moved to MeWe. We also set up Telegram. And now for the past, then I tried Twitter, and I lasted 48 hours on Twitter, which is very interesting, because all I dipped my toe in the water on Twitter. This is pre-Elon. And I thought, right, I'm going to test Twitter out, and I'm only going to share other people's posts. I'm going to share other people's posts, and sometimes I'm going to put a very innocuous comment, like my little bit, but very, very bland. And I lasted 48 hours, and I was completely deplatformed, which makes me think, it makes me sound like I really think I'm a bigwig. I'm not, but it makes me think that there was collusion between many of the big tech censored platforms. It was like they knew to look for me. I wasn't creating any mayhem. I wasn't doing anything that anybody else was doing on there, and I got kicked off. So, but I'm back on Twitter under Elon, and we have enormous reach on Twitter. Like, it drives me mad, because it's yet another platform to deal with. But I haven't been censored, and I think I've been shadow banned at times with some of my posts, but I haven't been deplatformed and put in jail. And I'm getting around 1.5 million views a month on Twitter, which I never ever got on any of the other platforms. So that's why we're over there. For anybody that's watching or listening, we're called NZ and the mRNA on Twitter. So we're not called the Health Forum, we're NZ and the mRNA.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll put the links into the comments later. Yeah, and this is a really important conversation, right? Because we, those of us who have been on this journey for a few years, we know that the third-party platforms are all censoring us. And and I personally made a decision to get off them quite soon, and I've had really challenging conversations with people about that, and I hear both sides of it. Like it's where you find people. So when I first went on my journey, and I wrote a blog about, and I used all the scientific data. I referenced Pfizer's own trial data, I referenced the MedSafe data, I referenced all of the, not the conspiracy theory stuff. And I put it out there, and I used it to go fishing. I call it going fishing. I went fishing in my network to see who was on my page. I watched my friend numbers decline, but I caught some fish. Like I found some people, some friends, and then it got shared. And so that is literally how we can use the tool to help us. And then I chose to come off those platforms quite quickly because, and actually for me, I think I was protecting my mental health more than anything else, which was, I knew the truth, but do I have to have these arguments and justify myself to people who don't want to hear it and are trollers? And can I cope with being deplatformed? So I personally came off it, which makes me a little bit harder to find now, which is great. But it's absolutely a tool to try and reach people. But also what we're doing is we're testing the waters to see who's censoring truth, who's got a agenda where they're not wanting the truth to be out there, what's, follow the money kind of thing. So it's been a really fascinating time for us all, to be like needing to learn new tech, needing to look for new avenues, figuring out what are the trigger words that get us deplatformed. So I did a podcast the other day with this chap in Greece, and he put it up on YouTube in Greek and in English, and straight away it got deplatformed. And I was like, I wonder. And he came back, because I don't really sit in the YouTube space either. And he said it was because we referred to two particular words, is what he thinks it was, which was plandemic and scandemic, which were words that I think he used one, and so it's literally like they use it. Yeah. And I mean, I don't play on those platforms, so I'm on free speech platforms, so it's not a problem, but it's fascinating to just sort of unpack like the importance of the information that you're bringing and the immense amount of time and pressure and energy and upskilling you've had to do to get this out here, right?
Yes, not just me. So there are now many other people, yourself included, doing this in New Zealand, but I was probably the front runner. I twigged to it before anybody else, before the wonderful New Zealand doctors speaking out with science grouped and formed and started producing their fantastic content. For whatever reason, I was a front runner in this field. The censorship has been beyond anything I could have imagined. I mean, I've completely given up with YouTube, other than I use their platform to watch half an hour of comedy every night when I get into bed before I try and go to sleep, just to defrag from the dark places that I've dwelt all day doing this work. That's the only thing I use YouTube for now, because their censorship is totally voracious. Same with Facebook. I cruise through Facebook looking at what my friends are doing. I don't post on there anymore. When I had the health forum, we went from one member, whoever that person was, I don't know, the first person that joined my platform, through to 58,000 members when we were deplatformed at our 9-month duration. And during that time, it became harder and harder and harder for me to operate within that space, because I was completely pegged as the voice to silence on Facebook. And my wonderful team of 5 warrior women would post my posts for me, because my own account was almost permanently banned. I mean, it got to the point where I was on rolling 90-day bans. I'd have a 90-day ban, I'd be back on for 3 days, posting so carefully, open-ended questions like, I used to do big colour block posts saying, what's the greatest challenge in your life right now? And we'd get like 2,000 responses, and then we'd have to turn the thread off because we couldn't moderate it. It was just insane. The most innocuous kind of stuff. And I'd get another 90-day ban. It was a game, and there was no appeal process. The kinds of things that I got banned for along the way were, in the early days, writing about ivermectin. early research coming out around the efficacy for prevention and for preventing serious illness and death with COVID. I got banned with that. I got so that I tried all different kinds of code words for ivermectin. I'd still get banned. I got banned for writing twice I got banned for writing posting peer-reviewed studies around vitamin D and how having an optimal vitamin D status conferred much greater immunity and much less likely to end up in a hospital or dying. So they were 1 month bans for that. I got a 1 month ban early on for talking about the very early stages emerging suspicion around a causal relationship between COVID mRNA platform vaccines and myocarditis. Got a big ban for that one. Another big ban for the early evidence that was coming around a causal relationship between the injection and menstrual dysfunction. So all of these things are completely proven, now factually accepted. I could go on. I got another one about talking about zinc and the immune system. It was ridiculous. So one day I just woke up and we were gone. After all the 90-day rolling bans, we were just gone. And I had the strangest reaction. There was one part of me, just a very initial response, that felt like this huge load was lifted off my shoulders, because I'd felt like a hunted animal for months, trying desperately to do my work, my calling, which was to alert people to hang on a minute, there are real issues here around safety, even before we start looking at efficacy. So a part of me just felt this huge relief because it was hellishly difficult. And then I just cried and cried. I was so traumatized thinking about this nearly 60,000 people.
Yeah.
We were their lifeline. They spent hours a day dwelling in this safe space where people understood them. Nobody said, "Oh, you're a liar," when they said, "I've been vaccine injured." They didn't say you're a liar. People extended them grace and kindness and compassion. Same with all the New Zealanders who were completely traumatized through mandates, job loss, declined medical exemptions. We were all there, and we worked so hard to create, we worked consciously to create a beautiful, healing, compassionate, supportive space to try to counter the brutality that they were experiencing in the real world. And so it was gone for all of those people.
Wow. That's such a crazy story. And I think, a few things there is the likes of when you got deplatformed for vitamin D. Like, where do we get vitamin D from? The sun.
Well, we're supposed to get it from the sun.
Yeah, right. And so imagine how crazy censorship is when this deplatform you for talking about the health of being under the sun, right? So that's just one thing. But the other thing that I just want to pick up there on the weight that you carried when you lost contact with those 60,000 people is this is the trick, right, of social media, because we don't have their phone numbers, we don't have their email addresses, we can't reach out to them. We've lost that. We've got this incredible database that has disappeared, and we have no reason to track, no way to track it, because it's on a third-party app and we don't have control over it. And there's that piece which we need to acknowledge, which is we're giving our power to them. We didn't have a way to contact them. But also on the positive side, I just want to say what you did then, though, was by then you'd already connected and shown, you were the way shower of truth, but also of how to create a safe space without being angry and without being in fear to 60,000 people here. Like, that's huge.
Yes.
And so, you were the way shower in that. And it's interesting sitting here listening to you, because what's going on for me is around the kids, and the sexualization and gender ideology in schools has become one of the reasons that I know that I'm here. And it's like, I sit here listening to you, and it's like listening to a brave mentor. You pave the way to show how to be just an ordinary mum, an ordinary woman who just had something on their heart they needed to share in a loving way. Because what I see so much in this movement is there's so much anger, and there's so much, you know, and they're allowed to be angry. I wrote an article about this, about the stages of grief. Like, we need to acknowledge that anger is a stage of grief, and so go through that, but don't stay in that space. You know, you keep moving through and acknowledge that it's a journey to the point where you come to empowerment, which is where we find ourselves, and others like us find ourselves, where this is the hill I'm willing to die on. So regardless of whether it means my face gets out there or whether I get deplatformed, I'm charging ahead no matter what. And guess what? If I get that tool taken away from me, I'm just going to go pick up another one. And I think for you were the forerunner for that for us. And I actually reference you sometimes when I speak, because what I find, and what everybody like us that's out there finds, is that the biggest challenge we have amongst ourselves is we go, but I'm just one person, what can I possibly do? And so I say, you know, Lynda Wharton, she's just one woman too, and look what she did. That's what I say.
Oh, thank you. Not allowed to cry on camera. Thank you, Penny. I've got mascara on that's not waterproof, but that really moves me. Thank you so much. And I, while I'm in the South Island living in my caravan at the moment, and I've been doing a lot of public speaking down here. It's been wonderful. People have kindly been organising events for me. And I have started consistently trying to get that message across to people. You know, people sort of say, well, what can I do? You know, I'm not like you. I don't, you know, I can't do public speaking, or what can I do? And the one thing that people can do, well, there's several things, but top of the list that you can do is find your courage to be one person speaking just in your daily life, to the person you sit next to in the cafe, to the barista that serves you, to whoever will listen to you speak. And I don't mean be on a soapbox, but form connections, start conversations, you know, say, hey, how has it been for you the last few years through, you know, the crazy COVID years? That, just an open-ended question. People start to share their story, and often then you can speak into that story, right?
Yeah.
And just plant seeds and direct people to resources such as the Health Forum or New Zealand Doctors Speaking Out with Science, some of the overseas resources that we can access online now. Because if millions of us act in our strength as just one person, we then become a body of millions speaking the truth. We become unstoppable, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting what you alluded to there around using me as a role model, or, you know, somebody to speak about, because that's the other thing. You never know how your courage is going to change somebody else's life. It's going to embolden them to step up into their courage and be all that they can be. And, you know, forever, for as long as I can remember, one of the little mantras or sayings that has influenced the way I live is the little saying, be the change you want to see. And I, you know, people might think that's just a twee throwaway line, but no, it's not. And that's why also, in this angry space that you referred to, the freedom space, the space of traumatized, hurt people who feel powerless in so many ways, I've worked hard to create a culture in my groups and with my voice as I speak in those spaces, to create a culture of compassion and kindness, even though that's a bit of a blacklisted word after, you know, the Be Kind leader that we've had for the last few years. And understanding, trying to build healing and connection between whether you're vaccinated, whether you're unvaccinated, whether you left through a mandate, whether you gave in and took the jab. It's all artificial division. It's what disempowers us, the people, by our behavior, allowing that artificial division to continue. So it's really, really important that we chuck that out, and we're just all Kiwis, we're just all New Zealanders, we're somebody's mother, brother, sister, daughter. You know, we're more alike than different. Whether we took a needle or not should not be the line that divides and breaks our families and our community, because coming together in connection and unity, that's where our power lays in the years to come.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. I love what you're saying, and it's so the message that needs to get out there. There's been, and I think as we put that out into the conscious field, more and more people are picking it up because they're realizing, right?
Yes.
And I've said right from the start and sat in so many meetings where they're like, oh, well, don't care about the jab, they're going to be whatever they say, and I'm like, no, I don't say that because my kids are, and so I choose to believe.
Yeah.
I use the frame I choose to believe, because everything is a choice, right? I choose to believe that there are solutions for this. I choose to believe. And so we're not divided. And I always use the frame because I think even the word unity has been captured a little bit, because it gets slung in to make people think that we all have to be doing the same thing the same way. And so if you're doing it different, you're wrong. And so I call it unity through diversity, because actually, as a race of people,
I like that.
Every one of us is different. And that's what makes us unique and beautiful. And so unity through diversity, I think, is what we need to acknowledge as the way forward, which means that you could come from, I was a person who didn't do my homework when my kids were little, and I trusted the government like the majority of people did. And so my kids were vaccinated when they were little, and I look back now, and if I had my time again, I wouldn't. But that's my journey, and so I'm owning that journey, and I'm owning my decisions that I made, rather than being the victim and blaming other people and wishing things were different and regretting the past. Like, live in the now, take responsibility for what you did, whether you took a jab, whether you didn't take a jab, and then step forward knowing that we're all here with you together, and being in that loving space at all times, no matter whether you're talking about the jabs or whether you're talking about fluoride or whether you're talking about the kids or whatever it is that you're talking about. If we can come back to this space of grace, is what I would call it, where we all want what's best for everybody. And if someone's not ready to come on that journey with us just yet, then we give them the grace to be on that journey and continue on that path. The biggest thing that I think that we would both agree on is that in these big situations that have hit us, we haven't had full knowledge. And so it's really hard to watch people making a decision when they haven't been given all of the information at hand, right?
Absolutely. And that probably more than anything else engenders the most compassion in me, allows me to hold the space of not calling people sheep, not judging people because they took the vaccines, because not everybody has had the ability and the pre-existing skills and background in healthcare to see the red flags and do the research. Not everybody has, and so people have just trusted those they believed were doing the best for our people. The government, the Ministry of Health, MedSafe, they've thought, well, I don't know how to research this, and I'm terrified because I'm told that if I get COVID, basically I'm going to die. Therefore, I'm going to take this injection. Other people, because of pre-existing education or pre-existing research into, other vaccines, or understanding what the normal lifespan of development of a vaccine is, people like myself and other people like us, we've been lucky and fortunate that we could see the red flags and do some research and make an educated decision. So I just feel huge compassion for the millions of New Zealanders that did the right thing, thought they were saving both their relatives and themselves, and now are paying the price in the short term, and God knows what in the long term. None of us know.
No. And I said this phrase, and someone picked up on it the other day as being important, where I say, but for the grace of God, there I go. Like, I was, it could have been any of us that made certain decisions, and it always is. And so that's the humility at which we can look at this, is, but for the grace of God, I could have been in their shoes.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it's crazy. So tell me where you're at right now with things. What's the key things that you're focusing on at the moment? And
okay, so we're in a bit of a lull at the moment because things have been frantically busy. Obviously, our busyness levels de-escalated once we came off Facebook, because when we were on Facebook, besides actually actively working the community and all the research and the posting, I was getting about 300 to 500 personal messages a day as well. as well as, maybe 100 emails a day. So the communication platforms were completely overloaded all the time. So that's quietened down a lot now, because obviously many mandates have lifted. Fewer people, other than the elderly, fewer people are taking repeated doses of the injection. So one of the things we haven't spoken about that we've been doing is in the Health Forum right from the very early days is we've created a confidential citizens database of serious adverse events and post-injection deaths. And we have another volunteer team, largely mandated out healthcare professionals, running that team. And so that has continued all the way through. And now we're putting a lot of focus and energy into filling every single data space on hundreds of reports that have got some data missing. And we've now got a large database of really, really high quality data that I would venture to guess exceeds the database that MedSafe has in terms of quality, not quantity, but quality, because we have attached to our reports, all the medical documents and the MRI scans and the ACC letters and the ACC declines and the ACC appeals. So we've got big files for hundreds of people. And the reason that we've done this right from the word go is that we have always envisaged that there would come a day where we sought justice for the injured New Zealanders and the New Zealanders who have lost loved ones. And that day looms close. It's very near. So currently we are putting a lot of effort, the adverse events team, putting a lot of effort into tidying up that data and getting it fully ready. We also have a legal review underway, which I'm expecting. I do have a verbal report on that, which I'm not at liberty to share yet, but I will be getting a written report in the next couple of weeks from the lawyers. And if that goes the way that I'm anticipating it to go, we will be announcing the kickoff of what will be a huge undertaking, basically calling all New Zealand COVID vaccine industry to come forward for a class action legal case in New Zealand, like the one that's just kicked off in Australia. Yep. Dr. Melissa McCann, she's now got 1,000 people that have joined her class action, and those numbers will keep going up and up and up until they're actually in the courtroom.
Yeah. So
that's what we're working on.
What you said just then should be headline news. That's the crazy thing, right? That's total headline news. That's what this nation needs to have out in the open to know. So just on that citizens database, a couple of questions. One being, how do people submit information onto it?
Great, thank you. So if they would like to go to our website, which is the Health Forum NZ, so that's all one word, the healthforumnz.co.nz. On there they will find a page, I think it says share your story. There's a tab, you click that and it gives you a form. You fill out that form and then one of the adverse event nurses will contact you and go from there.
Okay, that's awesome. And so another question is, are you at liberty to say at the moment what the numbers are for injuries and for deaths that are on that citizens database?
Yeah, sure. So understand before I share the numbers that the numbers really don't mean anything in terms of it not being representative of what's really happening, because we're not MedSafe, and only the people that know about the Health Forum and have also had the courage to come forward and trust us with their medical data, only those people are on our database. So we've got somewhere between 450 and 500 serious adverse event reports that are all now fully documented. And we have a separate database that is not the same standard of data. It's more been an observational process, and that one we've got a different team, the deaths team, and what they have done is they have taken first person, second person, third person reports, and also social media observation and obituaries. And what they've done is they've created a database of New Zealanders where they have died, and where we've been able to fully determine that they did receive at least one COVID vaccine, if not more, before their death. So we've created that database, and in many of those cases, We have got a time frame between injection and death, and we've got 20 plus children under the age of 20, teenagers and children, and many of those deaths are sudden and unexpected, passed away in their sleep, dropped down with a cardiac arrest, on the school sports field, later died. Unusual deaths that you don't generally see in the healthiest demographic in the population. So we've got about 760 deaths on that database from all ages. Right, we've got a couple of infants on there, going right the way up to, I think, 100-year-old and everything in between. So all we say with that one, we make no claims about there being a causal link between the COVID vaccines and the deaths. But that database, NZDSOS have submitted that database repeatedly to the Ministry of Health, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, now Chris Hipkins, MedSafe, saying, look at this database. What are you doing to investigate this? Look at these children. This one, there was 4 days between the injection and dying in sleep. What are you doing? Why is nobody talking about it? And they just get repeatedly rebuffed. They either get no response whatsoever, or thank you, we have received that. We are doing extensive pharmacovigilance through MedSafe, blah, 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 blah. So that's just been used basically as a wake-up tool.
Yeah.
And nobody's waking up.
Yeah.
None of the authorities are waking up, but we'll continue with that one.
The crazy thing that I find about it, to just simplify it all down, is how is it that the government can say immediately after someone has died that that's a COVID death, but then over on the other side of it, you've got people dying of all sorts of weird things, and you can make a potential connection that needs to be addressed, and they say there's, they shut the door on it, they say it couldn't be, or they say it's going to take years for that data to come out or do that research. The craziness about those two things, I think if we put that together for people, anyone that has common sense would go, how's that even a thing?
Absolutely. Totally. And I agree with you. For example, do you remember there was a young Auckland woman, I think she was about 18, called Isabella, who died a couple of weeks after her COVID vaccine with blood clots in her lungs, which pulmonary emboli is now featuring, quite strongly in pharmacovigilance databases around the world. And I remember it was either the day after or the day after that, it was 24 to 48 hours after she passed. I remember Jacinda Ardern going on the 1 o'clock podium and addressing conspiracy theory discussion on social media about whether this was linked. And her saying, we can definitively say it was not the vaccine that killed this young woman. How do you do that 24 to 48 hours after somebody's died? It takes months to go through, a post-mortem, pathology, a coronial inquest. Well, they're missing in action in New Zealand, very few of those. But, so that was in itself a red flag. You can't say that, it's impossible. Then we have other families. We're supporting a family at the moment whose son in his 30s passed away a couple of weeks after his first Pfizer vaccine, and was found deceased in his room. And the post-mortem and the pathologists, they have been unable to establish any causal, no toxicology, there was no obvious cause, no connection whatsoever, but they refuse to include in the pathology in the post-mortem report, and the coroner has refused to include the possibility that it was the COVID vaccine that he took 2 weeks earlier.
Wow.
It's just like
they've just pretended that he didn't.
The picture.
So they've just pretended he didn't get that, but they can't find any other reason, but they're not willing to look at what potentially could be a link.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
You hear stuff like that and you just don't even have words. So I just want to ask you, because I'm getting a lot of, we're all getting a lot of reports of people now dropping dead, having heart attacks now. And so this is, we're in August 2023. And a lot of these people are presenting health things that, again, they're often have no other comorbidities, or they're healthy, or they're young. And they would have taken 1 or 2 jabs back in 2021, and they possibly didn't take any more. They haven't been taking their 6-monthly boosters. But there are people out there, there's lots of people in their 30s and 40s just dropping dead. And I know that it's probably a hard question for you, because you haven't made the causal link. But my concern around that, just as a general member of the public who's hearing all these stories, is as much as people don't want to make the link, there's also the time delay. So that's also contributing to families who are left grieving, going, why did my 30-year-old brother just drop dead? Nothing really had changed, and they were healthy, but they were out for a run. What's your thoughts on that, as far as the awareness around the time delay, and could it still be linked?
Okay, so thanks for the question. And so I need to proceed my answer with making it clear to everybody that I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a pathologist. So my response is as a health researcher and a writer. Having said that, yes, very much unprecedented numbers of young, healthy people dying suddenly. Not just teenagers, 20s, 30s, 40s, the healthiest part of the demographic of the population. And the connection, because I've now read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reports, I share a lot of them on Twitter, there's a pattern. So one of the patterns is that often it's not made clear to the public whether this person has even had a COVID vaccine, rather than the family coming out, or the sports agency that's, announced the death or whatever, saying, Sarah was unvaccinated, had received no COVID vaccines. They never do that. So that automatically makes you think that they probably were vaccinated, just because the fastest way to quell all the massive social media interest about another sudden unexpected death is to say, well, they weren't even vaccinated, piss off, vultures, get out of here. But they don't do that, right? So, and you also can put 2 and 2 together for a lot of the people that are dying suddenly. They are elite or professional athletes who were mandated. They were mandated through their sporting organisations in order to be able to continue competing. So the themes that run through are passing away in their sleep, went to bed seeming fine, didn't wake up, massive cardiac arrest and either dying immediately or dying in the days following, or literally dropping down dead. They will be playing their sport, or not just playing their sport, also standing with a microphone on a stage, acting, comparing a show on TV. The thing that seems to connect all of those deaths, according to Dr. Peter McCulloch, who is an eminent cardiologist, one of the most published cardiologists in the world, an American cardiologist. Oh, my little dog's just been passed through the door to me. The thing that seems to connect all of that, in Peter's opinion, is the likelihood of subclinical myocarditis. Subclinical, e.g., was not symptomatic, has not been diagnosed, has not been treated. Therefore, the person is unaware that they have a problem. With subclinical myocarditis, you don't even have chest pain. You don't know that you have a problem, but damage is being wrought quietly. And with cardiac inflammation, cardiac cells don't replace themselves. They create scar tissue. When you have cardiac cell die-off through inflammation from myocarditis, your heart replaces those cells with scar tissue, basically. Then what happens is that scar tissue, if you're in a high adrenaline situation with a lot of excitement in your body, e.g. playing high-level sports or acting, standing with a microphone in front of a TV camera, the scar tissue can create sudden arrhythmia, and it's the arrhythmia that can cause the collapse and then the death after that. So that's a very simple, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's just a very simple overview. And the question about, now maybe it's 5 months or 6 months since the last dose and people are still dying. Well, that scenario that I just explained is a part of that picture. And Steve Kirsch, who is not a medic, but he's a billionaire in America, who is himself vaccinated and started observing all these people around him getting seriously ill and dying. He's devoted much of his time and energy and his reputation into and his money into researching this phenomenon and all the other serious illness phenomena surrounding the COVID injections. And he's done a lot of research with Dr. Jessica Rose, analysing the American VAERS database, which is the American Pharmacovigilance Database. And what they see is a huge peak of deaths in the first 48 hours post-injection in the VAERS reports. So you see a huge front loading of about 50% of the deaths occurring in the first 48 hours, which is a very, very strong causal connection. Mm-hmm. And the Brighton Hill Collaborative, which is a series of criteria that you use to determine whether there's a causal connection, that's right up there at the top. A temporal connection, a connection in time. If you have a healthy person takes an injection and they drop dead in 48 hours, whoa, that's a red flag for a causal connection. So there's that. But then what they also found is there's this weird event where you have the high deaths, they drop down, and 5 months later, they go into a second peak. So Steve Kirsch and Jessica Rose are talking about that very thing that you're observing.
Wow. And it's a really important conversation to have, right? Because it is happening out there, and there are a lot of people. I go back to the psychology of this, that I think is that people are out there who have encouraged or not encouraged their children to get vaccinated for their sports, who don't want to admit. And so the longer that there is the time delay, the easier it is to not put the connection together. So this is the challenge that we have is, I look at it and go, well, wouldn't you want to know the truth more than anything else? Wouldn't you want to know the truth? But the barrier to the truth is acknowledging that we were tricked, or acknowledging that we did something even though we thought that it was wrong, but because of whatever, we wanted to travel, keep our job, play sport, whatever, we did it. And so there's this whole psychological element to the how far we want to go to make the connection, or completely not make the connection.
It's an almost impenetrable cognitive dissonance that is so hard to break through. And yeah, we've had experience along the way, firsthand, secondhand, with fully vaccinated families who have lost a loved one in circumstances that to our eyes appear to be a red flag for a causal connection with a COVID vaccine. And not only do they not want to hear about it or look at it or entertain, the possibility, but they respond with great anger as well. But partly because, how much coercion was there from other family members for that person to take the injection, and partly because there's the rest of the family also vaccinated, and now if they contemplate that the vaccine killed their loved one, imagine the terror of living with that. It's in their body. Are they just waiting until it's their turn, psychologically?
Yeah.
So it's a very impenetrable force field of fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And all that we can do really is to show that we have grace and love, and hope that rubs off on other people and rubs off on people in that family. Like I've been saying to people for a long time who just feel that they're here because they're going to be helping with the healing part, helping to pick people up. I have a friend that says that he believes that he's here for the mop up, which is a good way of looking at this, right? And so for me, it's been about really encouraging people to do their inner work, to get in touch with their core reason for being here and to get through their own anger and despair or frustration or all of that stuff, go through their own stages of grief, so that they get out the other side and they know that if they can heal themselves, or if they can find healing and hope and love and empowerment, then when these people come across these terrible, terrible situations, that we hope that they don't have to, but inevitably a lot of them are, that when they reach out for someone, it'll be us, because we are there and we're ready and we're healed. So that, to me, it always comes back to that message for me. No matter how much research you do or how much you just feel or know or how much you need to have evidence, the answer is the same, which is we have to be in a good space mentally as well ourselves. We have to take ourselves away from the noise. And like you talked about it right at the beginning, when you said at the end of every day you spend half an hour looking at YouTube for funnies. And what I have noticed when I've seen your posts online is that you often post pictures of you taking your dog for a walk at the beach. And to me, the people like you and me now who have this who have the place to have a voice, is to actually share the humanity of that part of our journey, which is, hey, guess what? You know, I have people say to me, how do you not burn out? And my answer is, I go in the bush every morning. You know,
that's wonderful.
Because you need to come back and be whole, so that these people, whether they're ready to hear the truth or not, they'll come to you when they need to hear it. And I think that's a really important message for people to get out there, eh?
Absolutely. And I think another thing, you know, people say, how do you not burn out? And people say to me, how do you do this work? You know, 2.5 years, how do you do it? And I have my answers. Nature is my healer, like you. I've been lucky to live near the beach, and I spend a lot of time, you know, by the ocean, and that just washes away my stress. I have an incredible husband who is my absolute rock, and I couldn't have done this without him. You know, I had virtually a year of time where I couldn't think about running my home, my housework, my cooking, my cleaning. He just basically ran our lives while I did 14 to 16 hour days, you know, for that whole of that Facebook crazy time. But what I want to say, what I'm leading up to, is people might look at me and might look at you and think we've got everything together, and like look at us and think, oh, I could never be like her. Look at her, you know, she's so brave and she's so courageous and she always seems so calm and all the rest of it. No, we're just flippin' fallible human beings, just like you and you and you. We're all the same. And so I just want people to get that I don't always feel courageous. Sometimes along the way, I felt terrified by what I was doing. I've been under personal attack. There's been a personal cost to me for doing this work. And sometimes I've thought seriously about throwing it all in because I've been frightened and I haven't felt courageous. So courage isn't that you don't feel the fear or you don't feel the vulnerability. You do. Sometimes you're racked with it. Courage is feeling it and continuing anyway, somehow finding your way over that hurdle. And then the next day you feel better and you think, well, actually, what was I so dramatic about yesterday? I can do this. And you continue. So, you know, when you look at people who are, I don't know, bringing the light or carrying the truth or leading or demonstrating courage, it's not that they've somehow got all their shit together in a way that you personally haven't. It's that they're vulnerable and they're floundering at times and they're exhausted and they're finding ways of trying to dissipate the burnout, and they're doing it. They're continuing. So I'm saying this for everybody that's watching, don't think you can't do your little bit because you're not this person up on a pedestal, because we're all the same. Yeah. We're all human beings on a human journey, struggling with challenges and trying to navigate our best way through them every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I so love what you're saying, and it's the message that is the most important message right now. is that we can all do this. And I remember when the first lockdown happened in 2020, and we were all having to, like those of us who were working, who could work from home, we were all on these Zoom calls. And what I called it was the great leveler, because I remember sitting in my office at home having a meeting with the CEO of some big company who was sitting in a sweater on his couch. And I was like, had COVID not have happened, I would have put you on a pedestal and I would have been like, woo, but actually he was just a dude in his lounge. And so it was a good thing that we sort of started, I think, if we were aware of this, even back in 2020, we started to strip away like seeing people in the roles that they played and just seeing humanity as it was, which is that we're all valued and we're all equal. And so when you take that concept into the space where we're being asked individually in our spirits to step up and be brave. And like you said before, brave could be inviting a couple of friends around for a coffee and showing them a flyer from NZDSOS or something like that. It could be inviting some friends around and putting on the We Came Here for Freedom movie. Sorry, people just keep turning up at my house. Sorry, I'm just recording.
That's all right.
It's lovely.
Here we are, the great leveler. We're all the same. We've got humans around us.
Yeah, which is really nice. But, it's like these things are our tools. Other brave people have been out. This is what I say about things like We Came Here for Freedom and all the work that you do, your posts on Twitter. People out there who can create those things have created tools. They're not braver than you. They just have a skill in this area. So you are a researcher. Researching for me is the most important thing that we can be doing right now. And then sharing that information so that it can help people who are ready to receive the information. And so that whole piece about being brave and looking to people like us, not so that they can go, oh, cool, you've got that. Can you do that for me too? Is actually go, no, I'm way showing how to use your voice. And because I have people saying, oh, but you speak so well and you were able to do your board speech, but I can't speak like that. And okay, well, how can we help you to get to the point where you can?
And do you know why this is so important? Because especially in light of the announcement 48 hours ago or 3 days ago, I lost track of time, about, hey, New Zealand, COVID's over. Let's all make like nothing happened, that you didn't lose all your human rights, that nobody got killed by the injection, that we don't have thousands of chronically injured people left behind. COVID's over, guys. Move on. Go get a coffee. Right. I'm here to tell you, COVID was a dress rehearsal for, okay, we won't call it a pandemic. I don't know if it was planned ahead of time. I have my personal theories. What I'm saying is, it was a dress rehearsal for big tech censorship. It was a dress rehearsal for massive financial gain for big pharma. It was a dress rehearsal for rapid authorizations, for untested new technology, for mandates, for how far you could push people in totalitarian control. And we're not just going back to the world as it was before COVID. That world has gone. We've got 350 new mRNA vaccines in various stages of development because the powers that be have decided that mRNA is here to stay. All the childhood vaccine schedule is going to be swapped over. The shingles vaccine, the travel vaccines, the flu vaccines. It's here to stay. It is dangerous technology. There's so many things we don't know about it. It does kill people, as evidenced by the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that have died post-injection, with a long time frame in the months afterwards. It's here to stay. FDA are just going through a great process at the moment, talking about how they bring in rapid authorization in the next pandemic. They call it Disease X, the next pandemic, where the pandemic pathogen is detected and injections are in arms within 100 days. So guys, you need to find your brave. You need to start understanding the bigger picture of how you've been controlled, how voices of alarm have been censored, because it is now a playbook. And there is going to be another event. I don't know when, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but you've got to step up into your courage now, because we're not going back to the world that we had.
No, and actually what I want to add on to that list, because it kind of sums it up, I think, is it was a dress rehearsal in compliance.
Yes. Above all else, it was a
Above
psychological operation
it
above
was
all else.
it totally was, and this is the message that we want to get out, is that it was a psyop on compliance, and they did a really,
And
really good
and by
job at
the
it.
way, we failed.
It
We
totally
failed.
failed.
We
Yeah,
complied.
yeah.
Most people complied. So that was a success
And
for them.
what I've found in conversations with people, and again, I'm not a politician or anything like that, is that countries around the world that had a lower compliance rate were generally countries, from my understanding, that already had a low trust in their government, that knew that their government
Yes.
had corruption. Now, we've been sold the lie for a really long time here, because I always thought, oh, I'm so fortunate to be born here in New Zealand because it's not as corrupt. I'm so glad that I don't live in Cuba or in Africa or in places like that where the political corruption is horrendous. And the horror for me is realizing that it was here. A lot of it was birthed here, but it was hidden so well because our lives were great. And so that's how the compliant pieces come. And a lot of these wealthy Western nations have been the most compliant because we didn't question our government. And that's
Yeah.
the conversation, right?
And in New Zealand, it is the conversation, and spot on what you just said. And in New Zealand, we have some other variables. So we have a high trust in authority, but we also have the nature of our people, maybe born from the high trust in authority, that as a nation, as a way of being, we're very easygoing. We're peaceful people. We're compliant people. We don't like to rock the boat. We think she'll be right. And we just kind of do as we're told and keep the peace and carry on. So that makes us a very vulnerable population for autocratic dictatorship, for socialist governments masquerading as a democratic government. Everything we've lived through in the past 3 years, we're a very vulnerable population because of that.
Yeah, and we're also an island, right? So it's hard to get if the internet goes down, we won't know what's going on outside. We can't sort of easily get out to other people's. So I think that's a really important part to acknowledge about where we're at. And actually, I just want to bring in here, last night when I was at a meeting, and we were talking about what's going on with the kids, and the quote was raised, which is, and I might muck this up, but it's hard times make good men make easy times make soft men, and then soft men make hard times, and it's that cycle. And so realizing that we're in this space, particularly right now, where we've come through kind of the baby boomer generation, where they'd gone through hard times, but they came out and they were wealthy, and they've created, or that generation has created soft men and women, and we now don't know what it's like to go through hardship, and so we move towards comfort. Humanity always moves towards comfort, and so comfort in this situation for the majority is stick your head in the sand or readjust
and comply. And compliance has brought comfort, seemingly. Has brought comfort, because those of us that did not comply brought a lot of discomfort. We were locked out of our lives in 101 ways. That was difficult.
Yeah, and we're learning how to live with discomfort, right? And then there's a lot of people that were a bit uncomfortable, but when the mandates were dropped, they moved back to they readjusted their comfort lines. And so this is a situation we need to address too, is have we readjusted our comfort lines because we just want to stay comfortable and that's more important than the truth? Or are we willing to stand up and say, I'm willing to be uncomfortable because I'd rather have the truth? And we're at that point now with so many things. Like for me, around the kids too is huge, because if we can't stand up for our children right now, and a lot of us couldn't or didn't 2 years ago when they were taking our rights away as parents and vaccinating our kids without our consent, and too many people still complied. Like it broke me that didn't wake up enough parents. But now we're in this situation with the sexualization of our children, where it's like, well, if you're not going to think that that's wrong, I don't even know what to say about humanity, because if we think that that's okay behavior and we're allowing their excuses for that to happen to be acceptable, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say
Mm.
anymore. You know, we have to start questioning these things, and we have to find our voices. And I feel really hopeful about this. I don't want to kind of end this on a down note, because what I feel is happening is that we are more and more everyday people are finding their voices, and they're picking up the tools. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Let's end on a high point, especially seeing puppies arrived and husbands back now. He got banished from the caravan while I did this interview. So absolutely, you know, I've perhaps illustrated the dark points to be aware of through this talk, but the light points are that I am certain in my soul that we are living now in the midst of a tsunami of revelation of truth. You know, I dwell in that space of breaking news and new science and new voices every day. And even 6 months ago, the things that are being spoken about now would have been completely banned and banished 6 months ago. So there is a rapid revelation of truth. As people's fear response starts to decline and we stop living in that chronic fight or flight that we've lived in for 2 to 3 years, a different part of the brain starts to kick in. The prefrontal cortex comes back online. We can start looking at decisions that we've made and risks and benefits and consequences of choices from here going forward. And we're going to start see a lot more people finding their courage that we've been talking about, a lot more truth coming out. And I do have faith that in the coming years, it's going to be much, much harder to just roll out the exact same prescription in New Zealand for controlling the people. And I think Labour are on their way out.
Yeah.
Because so many of us have seen the light in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So, there's lots to live in hope and faith and still find the joy in life. It's still there, tiny moments every day. Nature's my thing. Nature, my therapy pup, and all the people I love.
Yeah, and I think that's the health piece, right, that we can all take away from this, is that looking after our own health and looking after our own mental health by way of going to the things that make you feel alive. Like when I go into the bush, I make sure I stop and I just watch the breeze and the trees, and I watch the birds. And guess what? It's in the Bible. The birds don't worry for where they're going to sleep tonight or what they're going to eat. You know, and we're made from the same stuff. We're made from nature, and we're created as natural beings. And so we've created all these constructs which put worry on us. But if we go outside and take a breath, and we take our shoes off and we walk in the sand and we look around us, all the horrible things are constructed. And
they're all man-made.
They're all man-made. Yeah. And nature is where everyone that I've talked to will find some of this truth and some of this peace. And I think, that's a huge part. And attached to that is looking at, you know, drinking good water and living a clean life and all of the things that we can do for ourselves. Well, we're not the victim anymore. We know that we're here for this time. And just on that, I sort of had the saying a lot, and you would probably have the same thing, which is, as the darkness increases, so does the light. And those of us who are shining the light, and I know that we are, and actually maybe we should have a little conversation about our hair going white, is that we're needed more and more because the darkness is increasing, or because the darkness is increasing, that's why we're getting lighter. Whichever way that it's working, the two things are happening at the same time. So when when it gets heavier and heavier, I'm like, but that also means that there's more and more light. So we actually, just to go
absolutely absolutely, and one of the other mantras I've spent my whole life living by is, this too shall pass. And that is my direction in life, because what that does is it encourages me. I literally say it out loud. I write it, I speak it, I sing it when I'm driving the car if I need to, reminding myself, no matter how hard and how dark it is right now, it's a season, and this too shall pass. And it also reminds me, when I'm in those high points, when I'm standing in the bush, reveling in nature, or on the beach, or hugging a loved one, my little mind says, this too shall pass. So it means be fully present, embrace the joy, be grateful for it, give praise for it, because this too is a season that will pass. And it's a beautiful thing to live by.
It is. And I wanted to say a few more things, but I'm not going to, because I'm just going to end it on that, because I think that that is the takeaway. This too shall pass. We're here for this time. We're not the victims. We are here to be the light. And yeah, and I'm going to put all your links and stuff down below. And I'd really love to pick up this conversation another day, because I think that
it's been so
really
wonderful speaking with you. It's been so wonderful. I'm always happy to speak with you again. Thank you so much, Penny.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to end the recording here, but stay on the line. Thank you.